Good day to you, and welcome to Insider Insights by Ruz. So this is my first YouTube podcast video, so there will be a few mishaps along the way. So please bear with me. I'm also referring my script here as well. So today I will be taking you on a deep dive about my design life and experiences. So I bring you this perspective as a young fashion marketer from Sri Lanka who completed her BA in fashion design and marketing. I studied at the Academy of Design in Sri Lanka, AOD for short, which is affiliated with Northumbria University, Newcastle. I won't be advertising for anyone today, so feel free to do your research. So in terms of fashion, AOD offers only 2 fashion degrees, which is fashion design and textile and fashion design and marketing. Well, initially I wanted to pursue the fashion and textile degree, because in terms of advertising, the university advertised it so much, more than marketing. I don't even think we knew what fashion design and marketing was, because everybody saw that the alumni from only the textile degree went out to be globally recognized and also locally recognized. They were the ones who got the best of the best. They were able to represent in competitions, in showcases. So in terms of marketing, well, I don't know. I think one of my friends during our portfolio classes, she convinced me, saying this is a double degree. You get to know the fashion perspective plus the marketing and business perspective. I mean, yeah, I knew this before starting a degree. I did contact the university and asked about it, and the same thing. And then when I saw the work of previous alumni, I saw that, this could be something. Marketing, fashion and marketing could mean something, and could mean much more, rather than just doing a conceptual collection and showing it out. And I did have an idea for my own brand, which I will be doing in the future. So we go on to what my design life is. First of all, I never even wanted to do design. I didn't even know what design was until I think during my O-levels, I saw a YouTube video of Georges Hobeika's, one of their collections from that time, and it was amazing. It was mesmerizing, to say the least. And I felt, wow, I want to be doing something like that. And then I did a few sketching when I was O-levels and A-levels, and they were horrible, to say the least. They were very horrible. But still, I persevered, and I was encouraged by my parents, choose what you want to do what you like. And then, I ended up in the university. I graduated, and in the apparel industry, we'll get to all that later. And let's begin with the university life and experience. So in terms of uni life, what I really felt that this is a clash between the syllabus and the real world. And it was heavily self-study compared to what was typed in the syllabus, saying you learn this techniques in this year, you learn that in this year. And there's a wider coverage here where we learn not even the basic of the basic, just touch the surface on tools such as Photoshop, Illustrator, and a few drawing techniques here and there, how to create mood boards, your concept boards, and this is how your portfolio should be, But almost invisibly, we were taught how to design for feasibility and marketability. I remember a few of those aspects being touched upon, but those were not exactly executed, not even in the previous collections from the batches before us, even in the batches now, because what design school really wanted was for us to conceptualize and then execute it and say, hey, look, I'm a fashion designer, this is what I do. But in terms of the real world, well, you're in for a shock. And in terms of the design learning, well, as I explained before, highly conceptual. And when it comes to the other learning aspects, such as pattern making, it was basic. Because we used to manually experiment, such as draping the pattern on the dummy and seeing what works, what doesn't work, taking the basic block and then manipulating it. But nothing exactly digitally technical. Nothing done with digital technical software, such as we did touch on lecture, but it was not much. It wasn't continued. And then nothing such as Clo 3D and not utilizing the software even in the university. I think it's a big gap which they need to fill, because what we ended up was doing self-experimenting and self-learning, which made us feel we are paying this much. We're paying an X amount monthly and then an X amount to the affiliation to keep us registered. What are we learning? And it felt pointless to do a design degree. But we persevered and we endured that unfair treatment. Anyway, so, but what we really appreciated for our teachers, because although they had few resources in the university itself, they never failed to teach us the basics and teach us how to execute it based on this conceptual syllabus. And they tried their best to help us to explore. They taught us ideas. Okay, if you have this kind of idea, try to piece it in a different way. They controlled us in terms of us going overboard. They said, and in terms of going overboard, and they found what we are really special at, and they encouraged us to pursue our speciality, saying this is your unique selling point, and it's what's going to make you stand out compared to the rest of your peers and compared to the rest of the competition. So you must go ahead with that. And in terms of, similarly, when it came to university fees and funding, one word to describe it all: atrocious. As I mentioned before, we paid fashion. Well, it's an expensive degree and highly expensive for 3 years, because, well, as I explained before, you pay a monthly fee, and then you pay to keep yourself registered to the affiliation, 2 different currencies, and then you had to pay for your graduation, etc. And all of that with lesser resources and lesser training, which in return gave us no help when it came to finding for fabric hunting for our first year, second, and third year toils and designs, and especially for the third year where we went sometimes, and I think most of us went overboard in terms of finding the best fabric, best craftsmanship for our collection, and we didn't get any help from the university. Although we did get some connections from the industry, we didn't yet get any cost reduction, we didn't get any kind of grant or scholarship that much. And it was self-funded, especially from the parents. And imagine you do this degree and you have about 2-3 siblings. It's a big toll on your parents. It's a hefty toll, and at the end of the day, the motive, especially for me, was to make sure my designs were executable, conceptual, and also marketable, because no matter how close I was to my concept and my collection, I wanted to sell it. I wanted to get it out there and cover the cost. And I kind of did, although not the full cost was covered, but at least some parts of it were. And I was able to pay my father for that. So in reality, it makes you wonder, and yes, we've seen this argument come up in other videos, other podcasts, what students actually talk about: is a degree really worth it when there's so much of internet exposure where one can self-learn and teach oneself skills, which even a degree won't even teach you to? Which is kind of yes, in a way, but then in terms of the university, you won't get this much of recognition, connections, and that's something which a fashion university really has, which is connections. And that is, for me, it was beneficial to build up my portfolio and also to get to know people. Okay, who works where, what are they good at, and how am I able to keep in touch with them to help for my future endeavors, so and so. And then moving on to my internship. I think this is where everybody's eyes were open, especially my batch, when we almost everybody did their internship in the apparel industry, at least for 3 months. That was our duration. And our minds were blown away because we felt, what are we doing in the university? Because the industry is much more different. It's a whole new world. There's so much of technicality, so much of perfect execution, looking at quality in ways we never knew. And the infusion of fashion plus technology, well, although designs were basic, it's that technology and executability which blew us away. So in the apparel industry, yeah, they do work for brands, but still they're able to innovate and give you solutions. And I was really grateful for that internship because it exposed me to a knowledge which you would never, ever, ever have in university. Although there is, I think, one or two universities in Sri Lanka who cater their syllabus to suit the apparel industry, so their graduates, so their students, when they graduate, they're able to find suitable jobs in the industry. And I was really thankful for my line manager while I was doing my internship because he taught me a lot. For example, these are the constructions you use for the sports bra. These are the tech and tools you have for a running mid layer. And this is how a legging is constructed. These seams are used when it comes to, and these kind of seams, such as a flat seam, is used for this purpose. And this is this material, it suits this silhouette. That material suits that silhouette. And this is how many parts which are in an intimate bra. And you see how a brand works with a manufacturer, how suppliers coordinate with manufacturer. It's a hefty process. But in terms of getting a business understanding when you're a fashion marketer, an industry experience is invaluable. It teaches you this is how you get things done. And yeah, after internship, I remember after internship, well, it was our final and third year, and I knew everybody in my batch had that urge to use what they learned to their collections. However, it fell apart. Only a few were able to execute it through like laser techniques and 3D printing. No matter, although it was expensive, most of us didn't have enough resources. We were able to do it, so we resorted to speaking with the industry and industry collaborations, which should have come appropriately from the university. I mean, it did come well, but there are some manufacturers who want to help you execute your vision really well, and there are some manufacturers who would just do it for the sake of doing it because it's a collaboration. There are things like that here and there. But nevertheless, we did it. And also, one thing our university really forced us down our throat was sustainability. Now, sustainability, yes, I agree, we all should become a bit sustainable in our lives, but it doesn't necessarily mean forcing it down your throat into executing it into your concept, your collection, and this and that. There are different ways to do sustainability, and if sustainability is such a broad concept, maybe they should have taught it like that, said this is how it needs to work in terms of sustainability. You don't need to like factory write-offs and etc. You could do this. Here's this suppliers, here's this person's contact, we can collaborate and do something. And sustainability in Sri Lanka is very, very expensive, especially virgin materiality. So I think that is why most of us resorted to hunting in fabric shops for write-offs, for cut pieces and like old clothing, because none of our collections were really virgin materials. And that made me think of the quality, because no matter how conceptually cohesive, beautiful, and wearable it is, it's less quality. It's not what you consider haute couture or high fashion or avant-garde or ready to wear, which we actually were supposed to promote in our collections in terms of their sub fashion groups. And in terms of sustainability, like there are multiple ways we're able to do. I mean, yes, we were given these kind of snip ideas from our tutors, but in terms of execution, I think most of us were lost in that. But now I think with more exposure and with other brands teaching us, other brands, they have put their work out there and we are able to see it. I think now only everyone's understanding, okay, how to tap into those different avenues of sustainability rather than looking for dead stock. Yeah, and along with sustainability, we had the opportunity of working with Sri Lankan artisans and craftsmen and including that into our collections. Yes, it was made a necessity to promote our collections with the artisanal crafts. Yes, I know a few people would argue because it is also difficult to work with artisans and getting your vision out there. Because I remember I fused more than 5 different techniques to my collection. I had batik, I had knitting, I had screen printing, I had sublimation printing, a lot of that, and infused into a collection, and with a color palette of more than 5 colors. I really don't know how I pulled this through, but I was really happy of the reception that I got for that collection. And working with artisans, well, yeah, you put their work out there, you have that goal of building and uplifting community in mind. But in terms of Sri Lankan artisans, it's difficult to get them to innovate and make their craft suit the modern standards. What I mean by that, you're not trying to really distort the traditional way of making, but at least helping them to modernize it a bit. Because if we take Sri Lankan batik, it's done so traditionally. They do everything by hand. Yes, true, it's a culture which doesn't need to die. It's a culture which should be protected and persevered. But how is one to be a creative and an innovator if people won't change, if people they actually have their motive of promoting it to the world, but how do you do that for this fast emerging tech world without adapting, without fine-tuning the techniques a bit? It's something I tried with Special Like my material, because I used corduroy on batik, and when it comes out of the dye, it's way heavy, 2 yards of corduroy in a heavy batik dye, and with the wax, it would weigh about 2 kilograms, or more than that. I think about 5, yeah. And I know, although I explained let's do this in a bit of a modernized way, they weren't exactly agreeing to that. So there you have other complications. But I really like, especially doing printing like sublimation and especially screen printing, where I experimented with more than 5 colors on one of my prints. It came out beautifully, and I don't know, when I asked them questions, okay, how does this work? How does that work? And some were really helpful in telling me, okay, this is how first you have a white base you apply to the fabric, and then on top of that, this color, and then with the next screen you apply this color. And all those methodical processes were taught to us when we went there and explored. Nothing like that was taught in the design school, although there were few resources. The time we were given in terms of research, in terms of showing our CPJ pages, we just had a week. And in that week, we were heavily focused on CPJ pages and doing traditional experimentation. It was all about that book, as far as I remember, that CPJ. That was the main thing. But in terms of portfolio, yeah, we were able to do a bit of more digital thinking, a bit of digital curation, which was good, by the way, because I think that was the only more technical thing, along with our tech packs, that we did. And now we move on to, and yeah, in terms of fabric hunting, Sri Lanka has a lot of flea markets, dead stock outlets, such as dead stock outlets in Pamanua and then in Petai, where you find good tailoring, good lace, and then fabrics from India. It's a whirlpool when it comes to finding the best fabric. There's so much you need to walk. You're out in the hot sun. You're trying to catch a tuk. You can't really go in a vehicle and get your fabric, and then a number of bags you must carry. Oh, and one thing, I thought when you're doing fashion, you may not have a hefty amount of bags to carry. I was wrong. I was incredibly wrong for that. Anyway, yeah. And then negotiating prices. We learned how to be a bit street smart when it came to negotiating prices, and we had to buy in bulk, because if we didn't, and if we just bought about X amount of yards, the price we pay would be much higher than buying in bulk for about like a roll or like 10 yards. Yeah. And it's very interesting because now you know these places. your contacts are not exactly the industry contacts you wanted, or like the design contacts you wanted. It's these shops. You have uncle from this lace shop. You have this auntie from this embroidery. This auntie from this trims shop. This and that. This uncle from this place. That uncle from that place. All of that. And I think it's also a part of community building, which we were taught in our design school. And yeah, our community are our suppliers, which is very important, by the way. And then moving on to my final year collection. I think this collection holds a very special place in my heart. It originated from my second year first semester look, which was an homage to the Sri Lankan mask industry. And the Sri Lankan mask industry has a very deep history with it. We'll get back to it with another video, I guess. And from that, it stemmed on. The concept was this: how to connect the Sri Lankan diaspora back to their roots through fashion. I don't know, the Sri Lankan diaspora is widespread. It's widespread among the globe. It's a very niche diaspora because you talk more about the Indian diaspora, the Pakistani, the Bangladeshi, but rarely about the Sri Lankan diaspora. And the Sri Lankan diaspora, they have experimented, they have brought the community together in terms of sport, in terms of music, in terms of the performing arts and food, especially food, but rarely in terms of fashion. So my concept was to do that, and I promoted it through my brand. I promoted it by creating a brand centered for that. And I believe that's an idea which is timeless, and a brand which I hope, which I'm able to put it out there to the whole world, and a brand which would last for more than 50 years. And that is also something which, for more than 50 years, yeah. And it had a good reception in terms of video, in terms of the execution, and especially I showcased it to an Indian audience. I remember there were graphic people who came during our showcase, so I took my portfolio and my whole other bunch of stuff, went to them to see what would they think. And yeah, sure, they resonated well with the colors, and I was given advice on my layout, my logo, and these were like learnings which you get when you're exposed to an international audience, especially through the biggest design festival in Sri Lanka, which is SLDF. And there you get creatives from all over Sri Lanka and also across South Asia as well, I think now. And also the biggest fashion week in Sri Lanka, which is Mercedes-Benz Fashion Week, where a lot of graduates, designers, and also brands showcase their collections. And moving on, when it comes to brands in Sri Lanka, yeah, everybody feels like they want to do a brand. I see that trend these days, but no one understands what it means to execute a brand which is relatable, has a good story in mind, and which would definitely last more than 50 years. I know we have brands like Carnage, FOA, those are athleisure, those are Sri Lankan active athleisure brands, and then there are a few other designer brands. But not necessarily are most of it looking to tell a story, looking to be cohesive. I see a lot of people think, oh, fashion means you're just a seamstress or a tailor, and it's not necessary. I mean, we could do a design and we can give it to you, you can sew it and this and that. But it's not fashion. Fashion is very difficult, and fashion is very difficult, as Alexander McQueen said. If you don't have fashion, is not for everybody. It's for individuals who would relentlessly create, who would relentlessly pursue. I just paraphrase his words. I can't remember the exact quote. Yep. And a lot of brands, I believe, which are like upcoming, which, although few are community driven, they're just there to satisfy the trends which are upcoming. It doesn't necessarily resonate to to an individual, their feelings. I may be wrong, but I'm just laying out there what I'm seeing. And not necessarily are people researching thoroughly in order to fill a gap or a void. And you see the basic same silhouette here and there, and the only difference is a print or a label. I mean, cool idea, but everyone's seen it, everybody's done that. What's new? What do you bring to the table? And yes, and then I think the most important thing I learned in uni is connection. I think I made more friends in university than I made in school, because we are a different bubble than that bubble. That is a very mass bubble. Here it's very niche. You are with your like-minded people. You see these different set skills of a person, and you're like, okay, how am I able to collaborate with them, especially for my projects, and how I'm able to help them in terms of their projects. And we had fun in university, especially doing these projects here and there, and that's something which gained me an advantage for my final year collection. And being chill with everybody, being nice and being chill with everybody, seeing what he or she does, how are we able to get an insight from them for our thing. Those are some things which were really invaluable in terms of uni life. And yeah, and after all of this, I'm very happy. The only place, I have to tell you, where I applied my internship knowledge more than my fashion knowledge was when I got after the interview, and I was expected to do a small assignment by my interviewer, and that too is from one of the same clusters in the same apparel company I did my internship with, and I think I'm very lucky to have got that and achieved that. And I have to tell you, it's a whole different world compared to fashion, but it's all about learning, and learning more and more as you go down. That's what really matters, because then are you able to make something which is more unique to you. You're able to use all knowledge you've learned to, well, with mistakes along the way, still improve on them and do the best. And in terms of the industry and the job I'm in, life after uni is not necessarily design. For me, I take it as a learning experience. It's not with all the techniques, the tech, the innovation. It's a learning experience. It's not necessarily a place where one needs to stay permanently, because you are now away from that little bubble. You're not back to the masses. You're back to dealing with people who don't necessarily agree with creative vision. You're arguing with business people. You're arguing with the business people. You have to do what they want. You have to do what the brand wants. That is all here and there. It's all a big pickle. Anyway, just whatever you do, treat everything as a learning experience. And whatever that learning is, good or bad, make sure you make sure you're able to apply the good things to your life. And cheers to all of you who are embracing fashion, who are fashion enthusiasts. Learn as you go, experiment as you go, and do a lot of self-learning, because I think self-learning is what's going to get you out there. Cheers.